Just take a deep breath, relax, sit back in your seats. Know that you are one. You are one with the goodness of the universe, one with the perfection that we see all around us, one with the snow that's falling in the Rockies, with the sunshine that is just emanating here in Florida, one with the entire universe. And I am so grateful for this oneness. I am so grateful for the perfection that we are experiencing. I know that no matter what the condition is, perfection surrounds us all. I'm so grateful that we all speak the word of God, that we are all inspired by the divine spirit, that Reverend Dr. Ron, this morning, he is speaking the voice and the words and the thoughts of the divine, and he is speaking it in such a way that each and every one of us is hearing it exactly as we need to hear it. I know that as we continue forth in this day, that that perfection is part of us, and we remember it throughout the day. And so it is.
So it is.
Patrice is not able to be with us today, so I'm taking on both aspects, both practitioner aspects this morning. Always remember that spirit makes things out of itself. It manifests the visible world by becoming the thing that it wills to become. In the world of the individual, the same process takes place. It is given to man to use creative power, but with the using of this power comes a necessity of using it as it is made to be used. If God makes things out of his thought before they come into manifestation, then we must use the same method.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast Sunday morning service. That was our practitioner, Edgar Rivera, praying us in and doing a reading. And before I begin my message, I'd just like to say to anybody watching that perhaps has never been to a Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all belief and lifestyles, whoever you are, and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. So this morning, my title is Never Too Late. And I want to begin by reading a story to you. And it's a little bit longer than a story I would normally read, but I think it'll set the tone and lay out the message for what I'd like to speak about this morning. So it starts, the first day of school, our professor introduced himself and challenged us to get to know someone we didn't already know. I stood up to look around when a gentle hand touched my shoulder. I turned around to find a little wrinkled old lady beaming up at me. With a smile that lit her entire being, she said, "Hi, handsome. My name is Rose. I'm 87 years old. Can I give you a hug?" I laughed and enthusiastically responded, "Of course you may." And she gave me a giant squeeze. "Why are you in college at such a young age?" I asked. She jokingly replied, "I'm here to meet a rich, handsome husband, get married, and have a couple of kids." "No, seriously," I asked. I was curious what may have motivated her to be taking on this challenge at her age. I always dreamed about having a college education, and now I'm getting one, she told me. After class, we walked to the Student Union building and shared a chocolate milkshake. We became instant friends. Every day for the next 3 months, we would leave class together and talk nonstop. I was always mesmerized listening to this time machine. And she shared her wisdom and experience with me. Over the course of the year, Rose became a campus icon and easily made friends wherever she went. She loved to dress up and revel in the attention bestowed upon her from the other students. She was living it up. At the end of the semester, we invited Rose to speak at our football banquet. I'll never forget what she taught us. She was introduced and stepped up to the podium, and as she began to deliver her prepared marks, she dropped her 3x5 cards on the floor. Frustrated and a little embarrassed, she leaned into the microphone and simply said, "I'm sorry. I'm so jittery. I gave up beer for Lent, and this whiskey is killing me. I'll never get my speech back in order, so let me just tell you what I know." As we laughed, she cleared her throat and began, "We do not stop playing because we are old. We grow old because we stop playing. There are only 4 secrets to staying young, being happy, and achieving success. You have to laugh and find humor every day. You've got to have a dream. When you lose your dreams, you die. We have so many people walking around who are dead and don't even know it. There's a huge difference between growing older and growing up. If you're 19 years old and you lie in bed for 1 full year and don't do one productive thing, you'll turn 20 years old. If I'm 87 years old and stay in bed for a year and don't do anything, I'll turn 88. Anybody can grow older. That doesn't take any talent or ability. The idea is to grow up by always finding opportunity and change. Have no regrets. The elderly don't usually have regrets for what we did, but rather things for what we did not do. The only people who fear death are those with regrets. She concluded her remarks by courageously singing The Rose. She challenged each of us to study the lyrics and live them in our daily lives. At the year's end, Rose finished the college degree she had begun all those years ago. 1 week after graduation, Rose died. She died peacefully in her sleep. Over 2,000 college students attended her funeral in tribute to the wonderful woman who taught by example that it's never too late to be all you can possibly be. Isn't that a great story? So Rabbi Byron Sherman, the late Rabbi Byron Sherman, said, "We all have a chance of being born originals and dying as copies, or to be born as unfinished originals and to further develop into a unique work of art." We create each of our lives as a unique work of art by fulfilling our potential. And here's a quote from his book. He said, "Each of us is an artist commissioned to create one great work of art during our own lifetime. And that work of art is our own life." So several years ago, I don't remember, 3, 4 years ago, Reverend Jenna taught a really wonderful class based on the book Aging to Saging. And, maybe we could lean on her and get her to do that again, because I know there are a number of you that have come since then and haven't taken it. So I was re-looking at the book. I was looking at the book again this week. And the authors, there's a Ronald Jones is one and a Rabbi is the other. They have several description of elders in the book. And they describe them as somebody who's still growing, who's a learner with potential, and one who's in pursuit of happiness, joy, and pleasure. And they say that elderhood is a time to discover our inner richness and a time to discover our spiritual growth. And they said we become wise, which wise people are sages, that we become that by doing our inner work. And they tell a story in there about a Buddhist Zen master who was on his deathbed. And one of his disciples goes out to a bakery and buys a pastry that he knows that the Zen master really loves. And he brings it back and he gives it to him. And even though he's in a weakened state, the Zen master eats a part of this pastry. And his disciples are surrounding the bed, and he's growing weaker. And they ask him, tell us, do you have any last words? And they lean in close and he whispers, my, but this cake is delicious. And with that, he dies. And the point of the story, the moral of the story, is that we're called to live each moment with delight. Ernest Holmes, who founded the Center for Spiritual Living, wrote, unless we are constantly expanding our thought, we're not growing. And growth is the law of life, and it's necessary. And he goes on, this isn't quoting anymore, it's paraphrasing. He said, anything we can dream of is not too great to undertake, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And that divine guidance is ours for the asking. And he said, it's not enough to know that divine guidance is there. He said, we need to use it and expect that it's going to respond to us. So I want to tell you a story that maybe some of you have heard, but maybe you've heard the story, but not the moral behind it. So the story is about a gentleman who's watching another man fish. And the fellow that's fishing has a measuring stick. And he catches a fish and he measured it, and it's 6 inches, and he throws it into his chest. Catches another one, and it's 9 inches, throws it into his chest. Catches one that's 12 inches, throws it back into the water. Catches another one, it's 13 inches, throws it back into the water. And the fella that's observing can't take it any longer. And he says to the fisherman, he says, I've been watching you. What are you doing? And the fella says, my measuring stick is 10 inches long, and that's the size of my frying pan. So we might laugh at the story, but we can also ask, how many of us are that old fisherman? And we're fishing in life. And God gives us an idea that's bigger than our frying pan. And our frying pan is the size of the life that we know. It's not our potential, but it's the size we know. So when an idea comes that's bigger than the size of the life that we know, we say, no thanks. Doesn't fit the size of my frying pan. You know, Ernest Holmes says, and this is a quote, we must wait and listen, then go about our business with an inner conviction that we're being led into a more perfect expression of life. And he says, all can do this. It's not just a special few that have the ability to do that. You know, it's so easy for us, no matter where we are, what our age, to stay in our comfort zone. But imagine the life that we could lead if we're willing to move out of that comfort zone and step into our power. Alan King wrote a book called Wisdom of the Heart. And he has a chapter in there where he says the purpose of life isn't to arrive safely, that most of us spend so much of our time protecting ourselves from what we fear. And so we people that do that don't really live. They survive. They deny their dreams. And when they do this, they sell themselves and they sell their lives short. And he said, life is about soaring beyond beyond the limits that we've been taught. You know, I read that when people that deal with the dying, hospice people, or Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote this, that most people on their deathbeds don't regret what they did. They regret what they didn't do. They regret what they didn't take a chance to do. The truth is, when you follow your heart, you live from inspiration rather than desperation. So I want to read to you something that Jack London wrote. He said, I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. The function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days trying to prolong my life. I shall use my time. I want to tell you a story about dreams. Rachel Remin is a woman, a doctor, and a person that now has a business that has a really she's not a minister, but she has a ministry where she works with people who are ill and dying. And she writes in one of her books called My Grandfather's Wisdom that one night at the age of 16, she went to sleep and she woke up 6 months later. She has Crohn's disease. And doctors told her father that for the course of her life, she was going to need many surgeries. She probably wouldn't live past 40. And she was in college at 16, and there was absolutely no way she could go back to college. When her father gave her the news, she said, no, I want to be a doctor. I don't care what they say. I'm going back to school. And her father said, I won't pay your tuition. And Rachel said, for the first time in her life, she heard her mother question her father. Her mother said to Rachel, I will pay your tuition. And her father said, where are you going to get the money from? And without even looking at him, her mother said to Rachel, I've had a secret bank account for years, and you can have it all. Years later, Rachel and her mom were talking about that moment. And Rachel said to her mom, were you afraid? And her mom said, I was terrified for you, even more terrified for your dreams. If they died, the disease would have claimed you. She said, Rachel, there are so many ways to die. And Rachel said to her, what if I had failed? And her mom said, if you had failed, you would have found out for yourself what is real. And then in time, you could accept that and you could dream again. I want to read to you what Ernest Holmes wrote about thoughts of fear and discouragement. He said, when thoughts of fear and discouragement assail you, turn to them and quietly say, You have no place in me. There is nothing in me that can entertain the thoughts of negation or doubt. I refuse to admit them. I know that my word casts out fear and doubt. It converts into faith. I know there is nothing in the universe that wishes me ill. There are no negative forces operating in, around, or through me. There is but one mind, which is my mind. This mind within me has never received an image of doubt. The God mind within me entertains only that which is perfect. Iris Krasno has written a number of books. One of them is titled Surrendering to Yourself. And in the book, she challenges us with a number of questions. So I want to tell you a few of the questions she poses. She says, what is the passion of your soul? What is the passion of your soul? Do you know? Do you know? Have you lost your raw child energy? What are you hankering to do? What have you stopped doing? And who would you be if you weren't you? Who would you be if you weren't you? And she says, if you don't stop to answer that question in your 40s or 50s, there's always your 60s. And I want to close with something that she wrote. She said, many people lumber through the days and years and decades without honestly appraising who they are and what they genuinely want out of life. They get lost in other people, consumed by material riches, or fooled by their own plastic surgery. We cannot run from our true selves forever. Inevitably, something jolts us into our naked being, and in our naked being is where we need to go. It's our true home. Thank you for being here this morning. God bless you. Have a great week.